There is a pattern that repeats itself throughout nature, history, and human experience. The greatest resistance often appears just before a significant breakthrough. This principle is easy to overlook because the mind tends to judge progress by what it can immediately see. When results are delayed, doubt begins to grow. When challenges increase, people often assume they are moving in the wrong direction. Yet many of life's greatest achievements arrive only after a period of intensified difficulty, making the final obstacle not a sign of failure, but a sign that transformation is near. Imagine a person climbing a mountain. The higher they ascend, the steeper the path often becomes. Their muscles burn, their breathing becomes heavier, and the temptation to stop grows stronger with every step. If they judge their progress only by the increasing difficulty, they might conclude that they are moving farther away from the summit. In reality, the opposite is true. The very reason the climb feels more demanding is because they are approaching the peak. The challenge is not evidence of defeat, it is evidence that they have come too far to turn back. The same principle applies to inner transformation. Whenever an individual decides to adopt a new way of thinking, a new identity, or a greater vision for their life, old mental habits rarely disappear without resistance. The mind has become comfortable with familiar patterns. Even if those patterns create limitation, it seeks certainty above all else, and certainty often exists in what is already known. Therefore, when you begin embracing a new belief about yourself, the old assumptions may become louder than ever. Fear may intensify, doubt may seem stronger, circumstances may appear unchanged or even temporarily more difficult. Many interpret this resistance as a message to quit. They believe that if their efforts were working, the journey would become easier immediately. But genuine growth does not always announce itself with comfort. Growth often begins with discomfort because it requires leaving behind familiar ways of seeing the world. The temporary conflict between the old identity and the emerging one is a natural part of transformation. Consider how a seed becomes a tree. Before it reaches sunlight, it must first break apart underground. From the outside, nothing appears to be happening. Beneath the surface, however, the seed is undergoing complete change. What once seemed whole must open before new life can emerge. If the seed could think, it might mistake this process for destruction, when in truth it is preparation for expansion. Human potential unfolds in much the same way. There are moments when everything familiar seems to be dissolving. Old beliefs no longer satisfy, yet new realities have not fully appeared. This uncertain period can feel uncomfortable because it lacks visible confirmation. Yet it is often within this invisible stage that the most important inner work is taking place. Character is being strengthened, conviction is being tested, identity is being reshaped. History offers countless examples of people who encountered their greatest obstacles immediately before their greatest accomplishments. They experienced rejection before recognition, setbacks before success, and uncertainty before achievement. The difference was not that they avoided difficulty, but that they interpreted it differently. They refused to allow temporary appearances to define permanent outcomes. Instead of seeing resistance as proof that they should stop, they viewed it as part of the process that every meaningful transformation requires. This understanding changes the way challenges are experienced. Rather than asking, "Why is this happening to me?" a wiser question becomes, "What is this preparing me for?" Every obstacle develops qualities that cannot be gained through comfort alone. Patience grows through waiting. Courage grows through uncertainty. Confidence grows through choosing belief when evidence is incomplete. Persistence grows through continuing when quitting seems easier. The final test before a breakthrough is often a test of identity. It asks whether you truly believe in the person you are becoming or whether your confidence depends entirely on external validation. If your certainty disappears the moment circumstances become difficult, then your belief was built upon appearances rather than conviction. But if you continue moving forward despite temporary setbacks, your identity becomes stronger than your environment. The remarkable truth is that breakthroughs are often invisible until they happen. A single conversation, one unexpected opportunity, one new decision, or one moment of clarity can change the direction of an entire life. To an outside observer, success may appear sudden, but those who experience it know it was built through countless moments of quiet persistence when no one else could see the progress being made. So whenever life feels unusually difficult, do not immediately assume you are lost. Sometimes the greatest pressure exists because something within you is preparing to emerge. Sometimes the final obstacle is simply asking whether you will remain faithful to your vision long enough to see it become reality. Those who understand this principle stop fearing resistance and begin recognizing it as part of the journey. They continue forward with patience, knowing that every step taken with conviction brings them closer to the transformation they seek, and that the moment they feel most tempted to give up may be the very moment they are standing closest to the breakthrough they have been working toward. All along, persistence is often misunderstood as merely repeating an action over and over until something changes. But true persistence begins in the mind. It is the unwavering decision to remain loyal to a vision of yourself that has not yet become visible to the world. It is choosing to think, feel, and respond from the perspective of the person you intend to become rather than the person your current circumstances seem to describe. This inner consistency is what gradually reshapes identity and in turn influences the direction of your life. Most people make the mistake of allowing external conditions to determine their internal state. If they experience success, they feel confident. If they encounter obstacles, they become discouraged. Their identity shifts with every circumstance, making it impossible to maintain a stable vision of the future. They become passengers reacting to events instead of consciously directing their thoughts and attitudes. Yet lasting transformation requires reversing this pattern. Instead of allowing the outer world to dictate your inner experience, you cultivate an inner experience that guides your interaction with the outer world. Imagine an architect designing a magnificent building. Before a single brick is laid, the structure exists completely in the architect's mind. Every room, every detail, and every dimension is mentally accepted as real long before construction begins. If the architect changed the blueprint every few days because the empty land showed no evidence of progress, the building would never exist. The clarity and consistency of the vision make the final creation possible. Your inner vision works the same way. When you repeatedly identify with your desired reality, you establish a mental blueprint that influences your choices, habits, expectations, and emotional responses. You begin acting with greater confidence because confidence feels natural to the identity you have accepted. You make wiser decisions because you are no longer operating from fear or limitation. Opportunities that once seemed invisible become noticeable because your mind is trained to recognize possibilities instead of obstacles. This process is not about pretending that challenges do not exist. It is about refusing to allow temporary circumstances to define your permanent identity. Difficult moments may arise, setbacks may occur, and progress may appear slow, but these experiences do not have the authority to determine who you are unless you give them that authority. The moment you continue identifying with your chosen vision, despite present appearances, you strengthen the mental and emotional foundation of the future you seek. Many people abandon their dreams because they believe persistence means forcing results through endless struggle. In reality, persistence is remaining faithful to an inner conviction. It is waking each day and choosing to return to the same empowering assumption even when doubt attempts to replace it. Every time you do this, the new identity becomes more familiar. What once felt unnatural begins to feel comfortable. What once required conscious effort gradually becomes your default way of thinking. The mind adapts to repetition. Just as repeated worry can create a habit of anxiety, repeated confidence can create a habit of certainty. Just as repeated thoughts of limitation can produce hesitation, repeated thoughts of possibility can inspire bold action. Over time, your dominant assumptions become the lens through which you interpret every experience. This is why persistence in the inner vision is so valuable. It is not simply maintaining hope, it is actively training your consciousness to accept a higher standard of reality. Eventually, there comes a point where the desired version of yourself no longer feels imaginary, it feels familiar. You stop trying to become that person because within your own awareness, you already are. Your conversations reflect greater assurance. Your posture communicates quiet confidence, and your decisions align with the identity you have embraced. Others may perceive a sudden transformation, but you know it began long before, in the silent moments when you repeatedly chose faith over fear and conviction over doubt. Every great achievement begins with an invisible commitment to an idea that others cannot yet see. The person who persists in that inner vision develops resilience because their confidence is no longer dependent on immediate results. They understand that every disciplined thought, every intentional assumption, and every moment of unwavering belief strengthens the bridge between imagination and experience. By remaining loyal to the reality you wish to embody, you gradually dissolve the old limitations and allow a new identity to emerge, one capable of creating a life that once seemed impossible. Many people become discouraged because they expect the external world to change the moment they change their thinking. They begin a new mental practice, adopt a new belief, or imagine a better future, and then immediately search for evidence that everything around them has transformed. When they do not see instant results, they assume their efforts are failing. Yet one of the most important principles of personal transformation is that the outer world often operates with a delay. What you experience externally is frequently a reflection of thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions that have been consistently held over time. Just as a seed does not become a tree the moment it is planted, a new state of consciousness does not always produce visible changes overnight. This understanding requires patience, but it also offers tremendous freedom. It means that your present circumstances do not necessarily define your future. They may simply be the visible expression of old ways of thinking that are now being replaced. If you continue judging your progress by what you currently see, you may abandon the very process that is already working beneath the surface. The wiser approach is to recognize that today's reality can be the echo of yesterday's beliefs, while today's new assumptions are quietly preparing tomorrow's experiences. Think about an architect designing a building. Before a single brick is laid, the structure already exists in the blueprint. The workers follow the design step by step until the invisible plan becomes a visible reality. No one expects the building to appear instantly because the design came first. In the same way, your inner world acts as the blueprint for your external experience. The thoughts you consistently accept, the emotions you repeatedly cultivate, and the identity you embrace become the design from which your future actions and opportunities emerge. This principle also explains why appearances can be misleading. There are moments when nothing seems to be changing, yet profound shifts are taking place internally. A person may still have the same job, live in the same house, and face the same daily responsibilities, but their perception has changed. They have begun to see themselves as capable instead of limited, abundant instead of lacking, confident instead of insecure. These inner changes may appear invisible, but they influence every conversation, every decision, and every opportunity they encounter. Over time, the external world begins to mirror this new identity. One reason people struggle with this delay is that they allow present circumstances to dictate future expectations. If they experience rejection today, they assume rejection will continue tomorrow. If they face financial hardship now, they conclude that prosperity is impossible. In doing so, they unknowingly reinforce the very conditions they wish to escape. Instead of creating from a new state of mind, they continue reacting from the old one. Transformation begins when you stop allowing temporary appearances to define permanent possibilities. Imagine looking into a mirror and expecting the reflection to smile before you do. It would never happen. The reflection changes only after you change. The external world often behaves in a similar way. It responds to the state you consistently occupy. If you wait for circumstances to improve before you become hopeful, confident, or grateful, you may remain trapped in a cycle of waiting. But if you first cultivate those qualities within yourself, your actions naturally become aligned with them, and the outer world gradually begins to reflect the shift. Another important lesson is that delays do not necessarily mean denial. Nature itself demonstrates this principle repeatedly. Seasons change according to their own timing. Fruit ripens only after a period of unseen development. Rivers carve valleys through steady persistence rather than sudden force. Lasting transformation often follows the same pattern. The process may appear slow, but every day of faithful persistence strengthens the foundation for future results. This understanding encourages emotional stability. Instead of feeling discouraged by temporary setbacks, you begin to see them as remnants of an old pattern rather than evidence against your new direction. You stop reacting impulsively to every obstacle because you understand that change is unfolding according to deeper principles than immediate appearances. This calm persistence allows you to remain committed even when visible proof has not yet arrived. As your internal assumptions become more consistent, your behavior changes almost effortlessly. You speak with greater confidence because you expect positive outcomes. You recognize opportunities that fear once caused you to overlook. You approach challenges with curiosity instead of anxiety. These seemingly small changes accumulate, creating momentum that eventually produces noticeable external transformation. What once appeared impossible gradually becomes ordinary because your inner state has changed first. The greatest mistake is giving up during the period when the inner shift has begun, but the outer reflection has not yet caught up. Many breakthroughs are missed because people mistake temporary silence for permanent failure. In reality, the unseen work is often the most important part of the journey. The roots must grow before the branches can rise. The foundation must be completed before the structure can stand. Therefore, do not judge your progress solely by what your eyes can see today. Judge it by the quality of your thoughts, the steadiness of your conviction, and the consistency of your new identity. Continue living from the belief that the life you desire is already taking shape within you. The outer world may seem delayed, but delay is not defeat. It is often the natural interval between planting a new idea and witnessing its full expression. Those who understand this principle remain faithful to their vision, knowing that every sustained assumption is quietly preparing the reality that will one day seem inevitable. Faith is often misunderstood as merely hoping that something good will happen in the future. But true faith operates on a much deeper level. It is not wishful thinking, blind optimism, or temporary excitement. It is the quiet inner certainty that remains stable even when the outer world offers no immediate confirmation. It is the ability to stand firm in an invisible reality until it becomes visible through experience. In this sense, faith is not waiting for proof. It is living as though proof is unnecessary. Most people allow their confidence to rise and fall according to circumstances. They feel encouraged when life goes well and discouraged when challenges appear. Their emotional state is controlled by external events, making their belief unstable and dependent on conditions they cannot fully control. The moment an obstacle arises, they question whether they are on the right path, and the moment a delay occurs, they assume they have failed. This cycle keeps them trapped because their conviction changes every time their environment changes. Real confidence works differently. It is rooted in an inner decision rather than an external situation. It comes from choosing to trust your vision regardless of what today's circumstances suggest. This kind of faith does not ignore reality. Instead, it understands that present conditions are temporary and that lasting change begins within before it appears without. It recognizes that every visible result was once an invisible possibility accepted by someone who refused to abandon it. Imagine a builder constructing a magnificent building. Before the first wall is raised, there is already a complete blueprint. The architect does not doubt the existence of the structure simply because it cannot yet be seen. Every measurement, every calculation, and every decision is guided by a vision that already exists in the mind. The physical building is simply the delayed expression of that internal design. In the same way, your future is first constructed through the assumptions you consistently hold. Faith is remaining loyal to that inner blueprint while the outer construction is still in progress. One of the greatest challenges people face is the temptation to seek constant reassurance. They look for signs, opinions, or immediate evidence that they are moving in the right direction. While encouragement can be helpful, dependence on external validation weakens inner stability. If your belief survives only when circumstances agree with it, then circumstances are controlling your belief. Genuine faith reverses this relationship. Instead of allowing appearances to dictate your mindset becomes the foundation from which you interpret appearances. Consider the experience of learning a new skill. In the beginning, mistakes are common, progress feels slow, and improvement may seem invisible. Yet those who eventually master the skill are not necessarily the most talented, but the most persistent. They continue practicing despite imperfect results because they trust the process. Every repetition strengthens unseen abilities until one day competence appears effortless. Faith functions in much the same way. It is the willingness to continue embodying your desired state even when immediate results have not yet arrived. This inner certainty also transforms the way you respond to setbacks. A temporary obstacle is no longer viewed as evidence that your vision is impossible. Instead, it becomes part of the journey, a moment requiring patience rather than panic. Challenges lose much of their power because they no longer define your identity. You stop saying, "This difficulty means I cannot succeed," and begin thinking, "This is simply one chapter, not the final story." Such confidence creates emotional resilience. You become less reactive to disappointment because your peace is anchored in something deeper than temporary conditions. You begin making decisions from clarity rather than fear, from trust rather than desperation. This change in emotional posture often leads to wiser actions, healthier relationships, and greater openness to opportunities that fear would have overlooked. There is also a profound psychological effect when you consistently maintain certainty without evidence. Your mind gradually accepts the desired reality as normal. What once felt impossible begins to feel expected. Doubt loses its intensity because repetition has strengthened belief. As your internal expectations change, your habits, language, posture, and behavior begin aligning with the identity you have chosen to embrace. The transformation is no longer forced, it becomes natural. This is why remaining unmoved is not passivity, but discipline. It is the discipline of protecting your inner state from being shaped by temporary appearances. It is choosing consistency over emotional fluctuation and conviction over uncertainty. Every time you refuse to abandon your vision because of a delay, you strengthen the foundation upon which lasting change is built. In the end, faith is not measured by how loudly you declare your dreams, but by how steadily you hold them when no one else can see what you see. It is the quiet strength to continue believing when results are still forming, to remain grateful before the harvest arrives, and to act with confidence while the evidence is still catching up. That unwavering certainty becomes a powerful force, shaping not only the way you perceive the world, but also the way you move through it, until eventually the reality you carried within is reflected in the life you experience without doubt. Every lasting transformation begins with a transformation of identity. People often focus all of their attention on changing circumstances while overlooking the one factor that silently shapes every experience: the image they hold of themselves. The person who consistently sees themselves as unsuccessful will unconsciously think, speak, and act from that belief, even while desperately pursuing success. In contrast, the person who gradually accepts a new identity begins making different choices naturally, not because they are forcing change, but because their inner concept of self has shifted. This is why every moment of persistence matters. Each time you choose to remain faithful to your desired vision, despite temporary appearances, you are doing far more than waiting for results. You are rewriting the story you tell yourself about who you are. You are replacing limitation with possibility, uncertainty with conviction, and fear with confidence. These moments may seem small, but they accumulate, creating a new mental foundation that eventually influences every aspect of your life. Identity is formed through repetition. The thoughts you repeatedly entertain become familiar. The emotions you repeatedly experience become natural. The assumptions you consistently accept become part of your self-concept. Over time, the mind stops questioning them and begins treating them as facts. This process explains why persistence is so valuable. Every time you return to your chosen belief, even after doubt appears, you strengthen a new neural and psychological pathway that supports your desired identity. Many people underestimate the importance of these repeated inner decisions because they cannot immediately see external change. They believe that if nothing has happened in the physical world, then nothing is happening at all. Yet the greatest changes occur within consciousness before they appear in circumstances. Just as an architect completes the blueprint before construction begins, The mind establishes a pattern before reality reflects it through action, perception, and opportunity. Imagine learning a new language. At first, every word requires effort. Every sentence feels unfamiliar. Mistakes are common, and progress seems slow. But through consistent practice, what once felt difficult becomes automatic. Eventually, you no longer translate in your mind. You simply think in the new language. Identity works in exactly the same way. At first, thinking of yourself as confident, successful, or fulfilled may feel unnatural because your previous self-concept has been reinforced for years. However, every moment you persist in the new assumption makes it a little more familiar until one day it feels completely natural. This gradual shift changes behavior without force. A person who genuinely identifies as disciplined no longer battles themselves every morning to take action. A person who sees themselves as capable no longer hesitates before opportunities. A person who believes they are worthy no longer seeks constant approval from others. Their actions become expressions of identity rather than attempts to create identity. They do not perform confidence, they embody it. This explains why persistence should never be viewed as passive waiting. Persistence is active psychological conditioning. It is the repeated decision to occupy a higher state of consciousness until it becomes your default way of being. Every time you refuse to return to old fears, every time you reject limiting assumptions, and every time you mentally return to the version of yourself you intend to become, you weaken the influence of the old identity and strengthen the new one. The process is often invisible, which is why many abandon it too soon. They expect dramatic change overnight, forgetting that every enduring structure requires a solid foundation. The unseen work of reshaping beliefs and assumptions is preparing the visible results that will eventually follow. What appears to be a period of delay is often a period of internal reconstruction, where old patterns are dissolving and new ones are taking root. Eventually, there comes a point when the new identity no longer feels like practice. It feels authentic. You stop reminding yourself to think differently because different thinking has become natural. You stop forcing positive reactions because optimism has become your normal perspective. You stop trying to act like the person you want to become because you have accepted that you already are that person. From that moment, your choices, habits, conversations, and expectations begin aligning effortlessly with your new self-concept. The transformation that once required conscious persistence becomes an unconscious expression of who you believe yourself to be. That is why every moment of persistence rewrites identity. It is not merely preparing you for a better future, it is quietly creating a better version of you in the present. And once that inner transformation is complete, the outer world has no choice but to begin reflecting the person you have become.